Corner Comics, your mostly weekly comic book reading club. My friends and I get together, we share a few issues with each other, and then we get together and talk about those issues that we've shared with one another. Manuel and Russ, how you guys doing this weekend?
I am doing amazing, more so than I expected, especially considering this is not just water. I'm just
I am fantastic.
Awesome. All right, so if you're following along, I have not tweeted out the issues that we're going to be talking about in a couple of weeks, which shame on me. But if you're watching this not live and checking this out maybe a couple days from now or a week from now, and you have some thoughts on the comics that we've talked about and you've read them also, you can shoot us an email, cornercomicsofficial@gmail.com. We have not received any mail there yet. So if you shoot us an email, chances are we're going to read it on the air, on the show. This week, we've got 6 more issues. I've got 2 that I'm bringing to the table. We've got Wasted Space #1. This is a Vault Comics book. Sort of a swashbuckling space opera. And my second issue is Detective Comics #27. This is off of the original run, and this is the first appearance of Batman. Thought maybe if I'm going to bring DC, I'll bring some classic DC, and we can talk about how comics in general and storytelling have changed over the years, because 1937 is has some drastic changes in the world of comic books. Russ, what are your 2 that you're bringing?
I brought Saturday and Sunday #1, Rock Heaven, which looks like a color comic strip, but it's really a philosophical conversation about life for those who observe it. And there's no murder whatsoever. Then, of course, I had to, because the lack of murder required me to have something that has some murder in it. So the next issue I chose is an Image issue called Death or Glory. And I ask you, the question is, what is it like to be so fully committed to something that lines do not matter? Manuel?
Okay. My 2 issues are, well, the first issue is The Cape, subtitled The Fallen. It is from IDW Publishing. And the second issue is Conspiracy, Alien Abductions. I'm trying to go esoteric and do a deep dive into the conspiracy theories here. So those are my 2 picks.
Awesome. All right. You guys want to jump right into it?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. So the first book we have this week is my first pick, Wasted Space #1. Like I said, it's a swashbuckling space opera of sorts. Vault Comics had all of their #1s for free on Comixology, so I sucked up all of those, and will probably end up buying a few more issues, Wasted Space being one of them. So this is sort of heavy metal meets Aeon Flux with the stuff that I do like about Saga without any of the stuff that I hate about it. The artwork might not be on par to what you guys prefer normally, but not something that I really have issue with. I kind of like the sketchy aspect of it. But yeah, so we follow this sort of nihilistic Han Solo type as he gathers together a band of misfits, and they encounter some space evil. So what are your guys' thoughts?
Space evil.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it in that it transports me to not only a different world, but a different mindset. The main character himself is not so clean cut. You could tell he's kind of shady. He has secrets. And then he, not unwittingly, but he doesn't want to have a partner. But at the end of this issue, he ends up partnering with this woman who kind of gravitates to him and latches onto him, and their quests seem to be aligned, which I like. I like the fact that we're seeing this what could be a great epic journey, great adventure. I really like the fact that the main character isn't so clean cut, and he's a hero, and like no, that's not who he is. So I appreciated the art itself was different. It would take a bit getting used to. Now I'm just one issue in, maybe issue 2, 3, 4. I'll really start to like it, but as of right now, it has not grown on me. It's nothing that goes against the story itself, but it's still taking me a bit to get used to because not every comic book style is like this. So, I mean, to its credit, though, it is unique in the artistry, and the lines, and the eyes, the way that they're drawn. Hayden Sherman is the artist, and I haven't heard much about him, so I'm interested.
Yeah.
All right. So this is hard sci-fi. So if you don't like hard sci-fi, this is not for you. You need to back away and grab another comic.
Yeah.
So, but if you do like hard sci-fi, a la heavy metal, this is a story that could have been in heavy metal if they ever made a series of it. There's something here. There's a fuck ton of words. There's a lot of reading, right, coming out of people's mouths. Maybe that's why they didn't spend as much time on the art, because they had so many words to squeeze into the panels, because there's a lot of reading. Concept-wise, I dug it. Right? I am a hard sci-fi guy. I do like a good story that doesn't have an easy answer, where things have to come together over time. So that works for me. The art, didn't love it. There's a guy, first of all, no eyeballs on any character, right? Some characters have their, like some anime where people have their eyes closed the entire life of their time on anime. Yet that is that kind of artwork for me.
Right.
Where's the guy, Howard Chaykin? Do you know the name?
I think I know who you're talking about.
So it reminded me of that. It was sort of rough and gritty as far as colors wise. It's not like you didn't understand any part of what you see. You see everything, right? There's nothing that's not explainable. There's nothing that on the panel doesn't make sense. However, a lot of times there's no background at all, but if you knew the colors.
Yeah.
So the art was serviceable for the story, but this is not necessarily an artist I would follow because of his art. At least not based on this, but it serves the story well enough. There's one panel where you.
Yeah, I was going to point out there's a couple panels where you actually get to see their eyes.
But pretty much everybody else, you're not allowed to.
It's only when they're surprised in like little tiny circles.
Yeah, like I have eyes, and then like, oh, forget it, and you go back. But the hard sci-fi was good. I feel like it didn't excite me as much as I wanted it to.
That's fair.
Like if someone put this book in front of me and say, read this graphic novel, I'd read it, right? But it's not a page turner.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's if you want a good story, come in and read it, and here it is. It's big, it's branching, it's overarching. There are things you can't see coming. It gives you that. So if you're looking for that type of hard sci-fi, this book delivers that. If you are not, however, if that is not your primary focus, I wouldn't be able to recommend it.
All right, fair enough. I basically agree with both of you guys. Like I said, I think the main reason I brought this is just because it was one of the free books that I picked up, and I like the art, and I dig some of the concepts that are going on.
Mm-hmm.
So. All right, moving on. My second issue, Detective Comics, number 27, May 1939. 10 cents on the spinner rack in the drugstore.
That's before my parents were born.
Right. This issue I picked mainly because when the hell are you ever gonna see this in real life? right. If you ever saw this issue in a comic shop, it's probably going to be locked in those CGC, plastic things. You're never going to be able to touch it. It's just going to be vacuum sealed and on a shelf somewhere. Um, so I thought it was pretty cool. This is another issue you can pick up for free on Comixology, and it's been redone, and all of the graphics are, all the panels and stuff have been touched up. The colors are brightened, but it's an interesting story about sort of corporate espionage, I guess. There's a group of people that are, one's in a chemical corporation, and then it's got partners, and they're backstabbing each other, and it was interesting.
Some things never change.
Huh?
Some things never change.
Very true. So yeah, what are you guys' thoughts on this?
I'll go. So this is when, how Spider-Man has the hyphen between Spider and Man.
Yes, that was the one thing I did notice about this.
The Batman has a hyphen between Bat and Man. So this is before he's Batman, he was the Batman.
Right.
And so that was interesting. There was a bit of magic. So first of all, I'm just talking about the Batman story first, and then the whole issue entirely. Okay, so in the beginning, they act like you know nothing about crime because apparently you watch no true crime, and they say there are things called fingerprints, right? And there are things called clues, and here's what they are, and we'll give you this in black and white, just so you have a good primer and understand about crime, because obviously you do not, before we get into the actual color of the Detective Comics issue. So that was interesting. There a 2-page primer of that. With nothing that we don't know in this day and age, but apparently they didn't know back then. Second, there was a situation, Batman has a lot of Batman pulled a wrench, a big old wrench out of his utility belt. Is it just me? He's stuck in the glass dome, right? And the wrench is as long as his arm, right? Smash. And I'm like, is that an unfoldable wrench? What the heck happened? Right? I don't make any note of it, right? He then unties his power with a powerful swing, and whoever the artist is just drew a wrench in his hand, like he couldn't smash it with his fist, right? And then Batman's gloves only go down to like right here, right? And I think they're red even, right? So he doesn't have the whole, the things that come off the chevrons or whatever of the gloves. It's just gloves come to right here,
right?
And kapow and all of that. So the bat wrench threw me off. And maybe it was on the floor behind him somewhere and he was able to pick it up. I'll give him that. But the bat wrench was a bit much for me. This was the old vehicle. And then you realize that this story is one of 10 stories in Detective Comics. When Detective Comics is really all about different detectives. And they threw a whole bunch of detectives up there to see what would stick. Here's regular plainclothes detective. Here's detectives in costume. Here's detectives. One of these people you're going to like, and we're going to make a full comic. And Batman was one of them. I remember Speed Saunders was something that came up before in my study of DC Comics in the past, but I never saw an original story before now. There's a Buck Marshall, range detective. Really? Range? What do you detect on the range other than grains of sand, right? So you get basically 8 to 10 pages, or maybe 8 pages of, there's one just called Spy. That's it, right? Nothing else. And I don't even think you get to know the guy's name till near the end, but apparently he's the Bruce Wayne / detective. There's the Crimson Avenger, which I do know of. So there's all this one issue. If I was a kid and this was the comics of the day and it had all these stories, I would be overjoyed, right? There's a lot of different stories here, right? And I don't know if you're ever going to get to follow them, but what if they could take a heavy metal story and make it into 8 pages and complete the story? This sort of works definitely for that time. And Batman is just one of those stories, even with his mighty bat wrench. So taking it as of when it came out of its time, I think it was quite good. It was interesting to see how they crafted some of these stories and how they just ignored some things. I'm surprised I didn't see an ad for Sea Monkeys. I was expecting that.
Or X-ray goggles, or
Or actually goggles, because this is definitely that kind of comic. What is that? The Murderous Dr. Fu Manchu. All of this, just how many different, it's basically heavy metal detective in a
yeah,
lot of ways. You know what I mean? It's those kind of stories. Full page ads for stamp collecting, just what the heck. But it tickled me to watch all of it. This is where, sort of how comics started, right? Something more than comic strip, something with an actual story and an ending, not just a joke of the day. So, I did enjoy it. Uh, uh, but again, you have to take it for its time.
yeah.
I could see that if someone bought me a treasury edition of all of these in one big book, I would sit and read them all. So I enjoy it, and I appreciate you bringing it.
Nice.
Emmanuel?
So, Batman, the Batman. I'm curious as to know when they dropped the "the," because even in one of the more recent comic series, they call him the Batman. So it's an interesting take on him. It gives a different feel. And one of the things I wanted to bring up was Bruce Wayne. In 2020, we really don't hear too much about Bruce Wayne. Yeah, he's a mogul. Yeah, he's the heir to multi-millions in Gotham, and he's a playboy. But the story really doesn't highlight Bruce Wayne because, for all intents and purposes, his psyche is Batman. Think about a Batman Beyond, not comic, but cartoon where he's talking to Terry McGinnis and he's talking about how someone infiltrated his mind, and he's like, I knew it was someone else because I don't call myself Bruce Wayne. I don't call myself Bruce. And Terry McGinnis was asking, well, what do you call yourself in your mind? And he just looked at him. It's Batman. So he is definitely Batman. The Bruce Wayne persona is an act, isn't who Bruce Wayne is. Every time he's in the spotlight, every time he's without the cape and cowl, it's an act. And here you see a little bit more of Bruce Wayne because he's sitting down with the pipe and his god awful yellow suit and blue tie, and you see a little bit more about Bruce Wayne. So it's interesting how that phased out because Bruce Wayne isn't the interesting character nowadays. It's all about Batman or the Batman and how that is taken up really all of Bruce Wayne's psyche and his personality and who he is. He is at his core Batman, and Bruce Wayne is someone he has to portray for the public eye. So that was interesting to note. And even back when it was Adam West, Bruce Wayne was always, it just still seemed like Batman was the character and Bruce Wayne was the
alter ego.
the act. Yeah,
The milk, Robin. You'll need strong bones to fight crime.
exactly. So,
But another thing is that this being Detective Comics, now Detective Comics is all Batman.
Yeah, there's no other.
Right. In fact, DC, the name DC comes from Detective Comics, right?
Right.
It's DC Comics, Detective Comics, right? And yet, Detective Comics currently only has Batman. Are there no other detectives worth writing about?
there's what is the guy without the face, and then there's this chimp, Detective Chimp. I think that's his name.
Yeah.
But no one that does a good enough job as Bruce Wayne because he's the world's greatest detective, which
And
should be
secretly,
highlighted
The
more.
Chimp is supposed to be a better detective. There's been a once where I've seen Batman go to him. Because Detective Chimp only has one thing, right? Batman's got a bat plane, right? Detective's got one thing. But all of those characters, I think the question, is when you're talking about the guy with no face.
Yes.
Yeah.
The question.
Crimson, so-and-so, all these characters, why aren't they, wouldn't it be great to have a good Batman story and then have another detective at the back end for like 3 or 4 pages, right? Why don't you
I think
detectives that way?
with all of these tie-ins and team-ups, I think it would be great, a missed opportunity that they could put the Batman. They could put The Question and Detective Chimp, all to solve this one huge mystery. That would be great, I think, because Batman, Bruce Wayne's ability to be a detective and figure things out hasn't been utilized that much, especially not in the DC cinematic universe. You don't see that. You see fighting, you see the brawn, you see intellect, but you don't really see the detective part.
The upcoming movie is supposed to speak to that, so I'm looking forward to it with that.
Yeah, here's hoping. All right. So this comic, I like the art. I've always been a fan of this. Doesn't have the
What about
spikes.
that sharp cowl, like the triangle?
Ah, yes. You know what? I think the new movie. You know what? I'm not gonna speak on that because it may have been like just some fan art. But if I'm not mistaken, the new movie kind of has a sharp cowl.
And the tiny
I
little
could be wrong.
ears. We're so used to like the giant,
Mhm.
sticking up ears on the Batman. Yeah.
And the blue, or not blue, the yellow belt. It always kind of threw me off because this whole thing is to be the Dark Knight, but then he has something that's yellow and I guess to direct gunfire. I don't know.
I think it's more so they can have more color. They need a third color,
Yeah,
right? That contrasts the other two.
Yeah.
Superman can't be red and blue. I think it's an artist thing more than a comic thing, more than it is a common sense thing.
makes sense. Now, speaking of icons and to draw fire, one other comic book I got was not I got, but I read spoke to the emblem that they have on their chest. Batman has the bat, Superman has the S, the Flash has the lightning bolt. And one of the things mentioned for that was not only to show the symbol of who they are, but it's to direct the gunfire. So that was
Huh.
interesting.
Yeah, they
A lot
say
of-
that this is the most armored area for
Mhm.
Batman. It's where he's most protected. So he needed. That's why you have that. Instead of just having the bat, they did a yellow circle around it,
Right.
so that it will attract your gunfire to the most armored place. I think Red Hood spoke to that certainly in the comics, and maybe even in that animated movie. He says, "Don't shoot him there. That's the most protected spot he has."
Right. And villains are always a superstitious and cowardly lot.
They
So
are.
they all do that. So this comic I really enjoyed. It was a throwback. Not that I was old enough to have read it when it was out because I wasn't alive, didn't exist then, but it is definitely great. A great read, great nostalgia. The art, the vehicles, the wording, everything is symbolic of the time.
Can we talk about the red Batmobile? That's just a regular 30s coupe. Just a regular car.
Yes. Which that doesn't make sense, but I guess because it was in what 39 was
Yeah.
it? It was in the 30s, yeah, 39. They just threw a fancy car in there and said that was the Batmobile.
Yeah.
It was a great read, short, sweet. I appreciate it.
All right. Moving on then. Rush, your first pick.
My first pick is Saturday and Sunday.
Sunday.
The reason I picked this is because having had some training as a teacher, sometimes you have to sneak knowledge past kids. Like, damn it, you taught me something. Oh, I hate you. Right? And so I feel like this book I could give to kids. I could leave it on the coffee table, right? And they would have read it. And then we talk about it later, and it would have so many allegories about life and how you should live your life and why you should and shouldn't do this, that they were like, dang, you did teach me something. And I wouldn't read it on my own. I hate you. This book sort of embodied that for me, but it looks like a Sunday morning comic strip. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so that was sort of my takeaway is it's a Sunday morning comic strip with an existential crisis. I feel like you have to be, at least for me, like I get where you're coming from. You can slip it by a kid and they learn something without knowing it. But the first couple of pages you realize that this is what's going on, is that these two characters are going to discover that they're, in a comic strip basically, and they don't realize they don't know why they know certain things, or like, oh, it's always been like this, and why is this, but I feel like I have to be in the right mindset to read through this. And it is longer than a normal comic book. This is like almost graphic novel length.
Yes.
So
I put a note in there so you didn't have to read it all.
but yeah, it was a little hard to get through because it was so long. I liked it. I like the way in which the artwork is done, because it's a little more detailed than just a Sunday Funnies strip. They did put a lot more effort into the characterizations and things like that. The colors were nice. The way that it shifted from place to place, you got a sense on each page where you were, based on the way that the colors were being used. Overall, I think I have to read it again. I think I have to go back and be in a different mindset when I'm sitting down to read it. But amongst all of the other picks that we had this week, it is so drastically different. It was kind of hard to follow along based on the other stuff that we picked. But yeah, I'm gonna go back and read it for sure.
Manuel.
Nice. I really like the art. As a kid, I used to always grab the newspaper because my parents would get it, or it would come to the house via the Sunday mail, and I would just go straight to the comics and read Family Circus, just the ones that I really really like. So I would pick out the comics, leave everything else to the side, boring old people stuff, news of the day, whatever happened to politics or whatever, and I would just focus on the comics, and it was an amazing time. If I were to come across this, I would have loved it, because I was also an odd kid that would read Reader's Digest and just weird things that were entertaining to me. I remember being, I don't know how old I was, 8, 9, 10, and really interested in philosophy as much as my brain could understand. But like the way you look at the world, the way different people look at the world, because I grew up in the church, or grew up in church, not the church, but I grew up in church, and it was always one mindset. This philosophy and just different ways in which people view the world has always fascinated me. So my love of comics, my love of philosophy combined, this book combined the two, and it's beautiful. I love it. I really, really like, what was it, the third page, in which they're just sitting down fishing, and the question is posed, what exactly are we doing here? And we're fishing. No, what are we doing here? Like, let's go deeper than that. What are we as beings, what are we doing here? Like, all right, I'm already in love. I'm already in love with the existential question, questioning the why, the how, the point, the matter of all of this. So I really enjoyed the philosophy of it. The dialogue was organic. It didn't seem forced. Sometimes things can come off a little too preachy or a little too philosophical, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
If it's not organic, if it's not just natural, free flowing, then it seems forced. This did not seem forced. So the comic style artistry, great, and the dialogue, great. I give this a 10 out of 10. This is good.
High praise.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I liked that there were times when they were trying to tell you something, and instead of putting it in words, they put it into art. For example, what happens if you're happy all the time and you only do what makes you happy? What do you become, right? And instead of writing that down, they changed physically on this page for you to see that.
Yeah.
Right? And so they didn't have to push words in your head. You crystallize those ideas in a different way. You're able to consume them without missing a step, without feel like you were being preached to. So I have to speak to how because there's a lot of little things you learn about life, little anecdotes that are here that don't actually show up in the verbiage, but show up in the action of the characters in the world around them. So for me, there's sort of an artistic masterpiece in a way to that, because you are conveying certain things in ways that people of all ages can receive them, right? And then you got, you got your colors, you get your 4-color comic. So that's what drew me to that, and that's why I decided to share it. So I'm glad at least some of you enjoyed it. I'm sorry there's no murder.
How how did
but
you
there's
find it? I'm curious.
Oh well, I'm interested in different things, so I'll try anything anything that's recommended to me, or anything by a different comic company,
Okay.
right? I'll give everything a first few pages, right? Like Manuel, you said after page 2 or 3 you were hooked,
Mhm.
right? So if I can see something and see in some page 2 or 3 to hook me, okay, now I'm going to go ahead and read the whole thing. And this was able to do that in a similar way to how it hooked you. So that's sort of where I came across it. Because I'll read anything, right? I do not discriminate. I will read anything foolish or crazy, or just anything that's not mainstream,
Right.
just to, because I know there are other ways to view the world, other ways to, other viewpoints other than what is the common Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, the Hulk.
Right.
As you already did, because you pulled the hard sci-fi out of, right? Which, what? So let's go back and ask, what made you pick that book before having read it? Oh, because it was free.
Well, it was free, and yeah, just browsing through it, there were certain things that stuck out to me that it's like, oh, I can clearly, get into this.
With us not being able to go to a comic shop just yet, that I say that's how you browse a couple things like, ooh, okay, and then you sort of bring it in and read it. Now, believe me, there's a lot of books that I did not make the cut that I have not shared with you. But this one did. So, and
Awesome.
Emmanuel, I'm glad you were able to get something foundational from that. So that's great. By your leave, I will move on to my next book called Death or Glory. It is an image book. And I want to say it's basically about this young woman who, her and her parents are in a desperate situation, and she has to do something desperate to save them. And it's sort of middle America, small town sort of thing. And no superpowers here, no magic here. What do you do? Who are you really when you're put in a situation where it's not like you have no choice, because you can just let it all right away? What is it that makes you decide to go all the way? Glory. Uh, with that being said, I leave it to you. What do you think?
I'll go. The art. I I'm having a hard time describing the art other than clean, and it's gonna sound weird, but romantic. And
Okay.
that the artist, okay, I'm glad you guys understand what I mean by that. Because I was gonna go into detail and try to find words. But yeah, the art is great, it's clean, it's very romantic, curvy, and just it's beautiful. I really like it. I like the way they depict the mountains in red. Even the gunfire. It was not too different than your standard comic, but it's still something about it in contrast to just the art. It works. It works out really well. Now, Netflix or any of the streaming services,
Yeah.
uh, I'm somewhat in or something, so it kind of reminds me of Captain Cold. There's that element there. Overall, I'm interested in. I want to see what happens on the upcoming issue. Matt?
So I'll echo your sentiments on the artwork. I think that it's sort of a nice blend of sort of action. Everything else about it is more the superhero, action oriented flavor for the artwork. So I think it's a nice blend between those two styles. It's not quite animation. It's not quite super realistic or hyper detailed, but it finds a balance between those two. I think I put in the notes, this should be a freaking Tarantino movie. Like, this is totally, it's the reluctant hero. It's the not quite what you're expecting to happens. When she finds the truck full of illegals at the end, like, what is going on here? Where is this going? So yeah, I think it's kind of cool. The characters are interesting. I like that. Even though there's no superpowers or anything like that, she still has a superhero aesthetic to her. So she's not building a suit of armor, but she's building a car. So she has that sort of tactile, she's mechanically inclined, sort of like a Tony Stark. She doesn't have a superhero outfit, but she has the racing jumpsuit and the helmet, which gives her, sort of an appearance of, kind of being like a superhero. So it did a lot of things that I thought were really interesting. And I personally like Rick Remender's work. I think he's a great writer. He is the sort of the Gen X poster child, and he's very unapologetic about it. So that has some of that stuff. This issue has some of that stuff in it too. Yeah, great pick overall. So
Yeah, it also made me think of, for me, what is the difference between what is different between me and a superhero, right?
yeah,
What you're willing to do, how far you're willing to go, how hard you're willing to work, how outlandish are you willing to go to get your goals, right? Because you look at, it's a lot of people with no powers in the comic books that are still fighting crime. They're just willing to go out, wear silly spandex. They're willing to go out and get gimmicks. And it may seem silly on the description of it, but the hero is the person who does all these things and moves it forward,
right.
right? And so this to me is someone in between hero and superhero. You know what I mean? It's like, or maybe not quite hero, but certainly someone who's pushing their energy so that they could become one.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that interests me in that respect. And of course, I also like Remender. So I'm sorry I didn't give you enough murder. We had a little.
Some blood,
Certainly.
yeah.
Yeah, certainly not the mass murderer that you come to expect from me, but I'm glad you enjoyed the book nonetheless.
All right, Emmanuel, your first issue?
All right, my first issue is Joe Hill's The Cape, The Fall. I'm going to read you the advertisement blurb. There's been no sign with the Russ voice, so hopefully I'll do it justice. There's been no sign of him for 3 days. In Joe Hill's The Cape, our protagonist turned antisocial antagonist, Eric, disappeared for 3 days, and he got comfortable with his new abilities. Where did he go? What did he do? And how much blood did he get on his hands? So, I don't know if I did that justice, but okay.
Yeah.
So, you see this character. What is his name again? Eric. Eric. The story follows him and his exploits. Now, this particular issue, number 1, you get the backdraft of him as a kid, him and his brother and his father going to this cabin, and kind of history between him and his brother, how they're always competing against one another. And then later on, you see him as an adult. Some things have happened. They don't really go into detail. This is just issue number 1. They're building to something. What happened to him? What happened, the disappearance? Why does he have this? I think it's a rope, not a rope. It's a blanket or a towel that has like a lightning bolt at the end, and he wrapped around his neck like a cape. A grown man, well into his late 20s, early 30s, somewhat, and he's just walking around with this towel as a cape, and he can fly. So it raises a lot of questions, and he stumbles upon the cabin, his childhood cabin, and people are playing. I think it's Dungeons and Dragons they're playing, but yeah, it's interesting. What do you guys think?
I'll go first. I really liked the issue. This is one that I had to read twice though, because I didn't quite understand when he gets to the cabin as an adult, like there's a couple of panels where it seems like he's surprised, and then you realize that I think there's just like an internal struggle with him, more than him being surprised at what's going on. So to start with the artwork, I think heavy use of black line and thick black line is sort of iconic for comic books in general. So the way that the heavy black is used in this artwork really appeals to me, because it gives it that, like, this is clearly a comic book, has a comic aesthetic to it. Yeah, I mean, what's not to love about a story about a bunch of LARPers? And there's clearly going to be some crazy shit that happens in the next couple of issues, because you got dude that's wearing like the Conan underwear, and that's what his suit is. And then the main character Eric with his towel cape, like it just is a great setup. I would have liked a little bit more in this issue. I'm not sure how much the story with the father is going to come into play, because there was a lot of that going on that didn't seem to wholly influence what happens in this issue. So, other than it's the same cabin, I didn't get a whole lot out of the backstory with the father, but I think we'll probably see more of that stuff show up in later issues. Overall, I mean, IDW, they surprise the hell out of me sometimes with the types of books that they put out. This doesn't seem like something that they would publish, because they're so heavy into the licensed stuff, and then they put out something like this that feels more like an image book, and I like that aspect of it too. Russ, your thoughts?
Okay, so this is series 2. There's an original comic called The Cape that tells what happened before this series starts.
Okay.
All right. So, and I don't know how much of it you want me to spoil, so I'm at a loss. About why the towel around his neck? There's a reason for that.
Okay.
Right. He talks about his family, but he doesn't talk about his brother so much, or does he? Where's his brother? And all that happened in the original series, which was also a short series. He wasn't born with disability. Right. Okay. So this isn't something. He's not a mutant, and I don't want to spoil it more. What I want to say is this: the potential of this book is very good. You can feel the anger, the energy, all of that, all through the pages, right? Yeah. In the ink, even, right?
Yeah.
But without that, there's no real action in the book, other than the fact that he flew a little bit, right?
Right.
There's no real fighting. There's nobody to fight other than maybe himself, right? There's no real conflict other than that he creates, right? Or dreams about. So I felt like this book by itself doesn't stand alone well. Yet and still, it conveys a sense of emotion through the art and how the character sort of deals with all the things that show up around him. This is a problematic person, a person with that are bigger and deeper than you can see, and he's sort of navigating that. And he just happens to be able to fly. There's something to that also. So I would suggest, if you can find it, go back and find the original Cape miniseries, which is probably another 4 issues.
Okay.
And then with this.
Is this at all related to the television, the NBC short-lived television show?
Okay. I thought it was originally when I read the original book, but it's not.
Okay.
But it does give you some explanation. Why does he wear that towel? And I could just tell you, but then that might ruin it for those of you who actually want to go into deeper read the book. So did I enjoy the book? Yes, it gave me some sort of emotional gravitas to it in the art and in how the character handles things. But I feel it's sort of incomplete on its own because you don't really have a protagonist. You don't really have a, you know what I mean? Where is this going? What is he trying to do? Is he just mad today? And he flew to an old thing and then ran into some LARPers, and that's still pretty much the issue. And he had some dreams. You see what I'm saying? It's not, for me, it's not a full and complete being a full and complete book on its own. I feel like you need the whole story here.
And
Like, go ahead.
for the uninitiated, LARPer stands for live action role play. For those listeners that aren't in the know.
I'm thinking that anybody that's watching us right now probably knows what LARPing is.
Yeah.
Okay. Good point.
But anyway, I feel like if you put all the ingredients, if you list all the ingredients of the book, it doesn't have enough to stand alone. Yet and still, I enjoyed it. Right. So it's just that things that I come to expect from a book. You need a antagonist and a protagonist. You don't really have that in this book.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You just have sort of a day in a life. It's almost like a middle, anime would have these middle episodes that are just about the character for a hot minute, not about what he's fighting. It seems to be more like that middle thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get that.
All right.
Awesome. All right. So my second issue is Conspiracy, number 2, Alien Abductions. And this is by Xenoscope. Written by Adam F. Goldberg and Hans Rodenoff. Art by Alan Otero. All right. And this is one of my guilty pleasures. I think, like Matt, like the out there, the out there stories about alien conspiracies and about what people believe, and they have a lot of what they believe credible arguments. And I saw this and I read this and I experienced this, so it's really, really interesting. And see a comic that actually details someone's alien abduction. This isn't an alien like Superman's an alien. This is one of those War of the World type. I'm going to take you and do some invasive maneuvers on you, and and still keep you alive though, and make you watch while your entrails are on the table, because you're still alive, your eyes still function, because we have the technology to do that, to disassemble you and to have you look at everything that we've done and then put you back together, put you on Earth, and no one will believe you. Who are you going to tell? So this is kind of that story about what happens to an individual who experiences that very same thing. There's a panel where all of his body's cut open like on a cadaver table, and you see his eyes on one slab looking at the rest of his body, where you see liver over here, spleen over here. It's gory and it's detailed. So maybe this, Russ, is kind of taking the place of all the murder. Maybe this gore kind of balances that out. But tell me what you guys think.
Okay. So I felt like the artwork was serviceable, but not over the top.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You can see everything you need to see. The gore is well detailed and explained, but it's not where like, oh my God, this art is amazing. Right.
Yeah.
But there's some decent panel work here that I do like, and a few things that that do work for me. I do like when panels bleed together. That's sort of entertaining for me, when the foot of someone is, and there's someone else is standing on another panel, or someone is standing next to the panel, but they're kind of their own panel. So I like that part of it. Conspiracy is the proper word for it. Shouldn't start with UFO abduction. It should really start with conspiracy. There are men in black. Who knows if the men in black are even government, or are they agents of some other evil thing? I don't know. But it does speak to the frustratingness of having something happen to me and you guys don't get it, and it's fucking with me, and I don't know what to do, and everyone I can go to says, oh no, it's not that bad, nothing really happened, you probably imagined it. And that sort of irks me, because as a kid, I experienced a lot of what was happening for me is irrelevant or not real or not what I say. So that sort of hooked me a little bit. And I can understand the frustration if people are just not going to get it because it doesn't make sense to them. And so instead of saying, I don't get it, they're going to say there's something wrong with you.
Right.
And that hooked me a little bit. So I did enjoy the story of it. The art, again, fair to Midland. I am interested to see where this goes, what the big bad is. Is there a big bad? Does he have superpowers? I don't know, because he could, right? Uh, so anyway, sort of nothing bad or wrong about the book at all. It was enjoyable. It's probably not something I would have picked up based on the art alone or on the concept alone, but having read through it, I am interested.
Yeah, this isn't something I may have picked it up off the shelf, but the fact that the man was like, "Yeah, you need to read this for this week." I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I walked away loving this book. This is, like, man, like you were saying, alien abduction shows or like Ancient Aliens or X-Files. Like, this is me on a Sunday afternoon with like a pint of ice cream, just watching these shows one after the other in the horrible semi-documentary like way in which they do it. This book takes it a little bit further, and I think does a little bit better job than some of those pseudo documentary shows where they have like the bad acting in between the interview segments. Right? This replaces that. The story underneath though is kind of interesting because you have this guy that's ostensibly cheating on his wife. At least that's what is implied, right? He's talking to his kids on the computer, and he's in a hotel with a hooker, and then gets abducted by aliens. So at first you're like, I don't really feel so bad about this guy with his organs all out on the table and whatnot. But then you get to the end, and you're not really sure because you're kind of seeing the story from his perspective. What is real? What's not real? What is what is he making up? Is he making anything up? Did this all actually happen? And then he's talking to the therapist at the end, and you're not really sure what to believe. And I thought that was really interesting. And I don't feel like we get a lot of these types of stories in comics. I feel like it's sort of relegated to other media. And in that regard, I thought it was really cool. This book does have like a heavy indie feel to it, though. The artwork's not quite there. It's just below like what you would consider sort of a AAA comic or like a major mainstream Marvel DC published book. And it's like right on the precipice. Like it wants to be great, and it's almost there, and could be. But yeah, I'm totally into this. I went and checked out Zenescope's website, and I'm gonna look for the rest of their books. Because I'm totally into this, and I like these types of stories.
I think I want to remember Zenescope as having a lot of almost porn comics.
Almost what books?
Extra nakedness. That's just a little more than, I mean, you don't see a Zenescope comic at Walmart.
Right.
But you'll see if you sort of explore them a little more. I do have some memory of a lot of Zenescope comics. I'm not saying they're having sex, but there's a little more nakedness than DC or Marvel will allow. There's a little bit more big booties and breastises you normally would allow in comics. But that's my memory of it. So I'm getting how that works out for you.
All right.
Moving on, any final thoughts?
So DC Comics is coming back. Is it next week?
Yeah, so I talked to the guy that owns the shop down the street from my house, and he said May 20th, I think, is the first shipment of new books. So, yeah, we'll be getting everything. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Spawn, X-Men, Batman, Superman, Flash, all that stuff's coming out. I think.
I don't hear anything about Marvel. I hear DC, but I don't hear Marvel saying they're coming out with anything.
No, I think they are. I think all of his new books are coming in. But they're gonna stay on this. I think they're gonna stay on the same release schedule. So basically, everything just got delayed 6 weeks or whatever, and it'll still
That probably
be
for everybody because the artists can have to work from home. Jim Lee is killing it, doing a full-on sketch every day for 60 days, and it's not some whack-ass 5-minute sketch, man.
No, yeah, he really takes the time.
Beyond, they had him the interview. Fat Man Beyond is getting some great interviews because now they're interviewing via Skype, right? So they're getting big people to come in. And Jim Lee says, "Yeah, I was just going to do a nice little sketch, one a day or whatever." He says, "But I couldn't stop. I just started drawing, and then it sort of came alive of its own." And see, now I'm spending like 8 hours a day this to look at them, and he's putting some on this what do you call where you can bid on it, some type of site or whatever, auction site.
Oh,
They're paying big money because these are Jim Lee originals, right?
right.
Right, he can draw whatever he wants. He doesn't have to see anything.
Yeah.
And so he says there are some collectors that have already paid money and already own most of them, like one guy.
Wow.
Because if you got the money and you want your Jim Lee originals, you know what I mean? They're not going to be, because I thought somebody needs to scan these in, put these in a book. This is a tabletop thing waiting to happen. Imagine if somebody could even color them later.
Yeah.
Right. So I thought that was huge, and good to know you're still in communication with the comic shops. I am. There's a comic shop that I go to, Bedrock Comics, and they have a group. I don't know if they sponsor, but they have a group that gets together, sort of similar to what we do, but in person.
Yeah.
And they were getting together doing their thing on Skype, like 9 people. Hollywood Squares or whatever, right?
Yeah.
All talking about those books. I don't even think they care if they went over an hour. They're just doing their thing. Yes, the comic shops, the stronger ones are still alive. And I think that in order to be a living comic shop, you have to have more going on than just selling the comics anyway. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I don't think there's just not enough money in it.
Yeah, it's kind of sucks. My shop, he had bought a bunch of Xbox Ones, and he was going to convert the back half of the shop to like a little gaming center, and he ended up selling. That's how I got my Xbox One, as he was selling those off because he couldn't have anybody in the shop to hang out and play video games. So,
wow.
Yeah, and I think that's what these, because a lot of times when I see these comic shops, they always have like a Magic the Gathering group. Every one of them seems to have a card gaming group that meets.
And it's a big deal to be sanctioned by Wizards too. So if you get listed on like an official place to go play Magic, it's a big deal.
So, but like I said, in order to be successful in this business, you have to diversify. I was listening to Kevin Smith talking about, because he owns that one comic shop where they have the show Comic Book Men.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if they're going to survive. He says they will probably survive because he can carry them.
Right. Yeah, he's not going to let that die. I mean, that's basically his collection of, comics, right?
He sold his comics to write his first film.
Yeah.
Get his first and everything. But if not for him, that comic shop would be gone.
Right.
And there's going to be a lot of comic shop casualties. And someone said when I was watching this one podcast as well, if your comic shop is a website or something, buy a gift certificate. If you buy gifts from them, you're giving them money to stay in business, and they are going to have books later, and you'll get all your money back, and you probably get a good discount, right? Get a gift certificate for a friend that likes comics, right?
That's good.
Because if someone gave me a gift certificate for comics, I'm definitely going in to get me some, right?
Right.
That's a guaranteed buy. That's not,
Yeah.
That it's not like a coupon for a sponge or anything that never gets used. Somebody gives you a gift certificate for comics, you go get comics.
Right.
It's cool too. The one of the other shops here in town, what they were doing was doing Facebook Live broadcasts, and they were just hanging out on Friday nights, drinking, showing off these books. I'm like, hit us up. Like, we got $25 boxes. You get 50 books or whatever, and they were just hanging out, drinking with everybody on Facebook and showing off their books. And like, hit us up in the comments. Let us know which ones you want. Reserve your issues. And I think, if nothing else, that type of creativity and that type of innovation is gonna bleed through. I think hopefully we'll still see stuff like that moving forward. That will sort of change the conversation around shops too.
Yeah, one of the great things I always loved about comic cons and good comic shops was digging in the crates.
Yeah.
Right. You can't dig in the crates at Walmart. Right. You can only go to a legit comic shop to dig in crates and find to get a whole run, or have someone say, "I need this one book," and they go get it for you to complete your run. Right. You can only do that. You can't do it on Amazon. Right. It's these comic shops that are going to fill that need.
Yeah.
And depending on where you are in life, I'm at a point in time where a lot of my friends, they now have kids, and their kids are very young. They're in their formative years, and they're learning to read. The kids are learning to read. So comics are a great introduction for those kids because it has the graphics. Then it also has a storyline in which they can watch and follow along. Not every comic is for kids, though, obviously, but you can still get them to love the joy of reading and fall in love with these comic book characters, so that it's a great investment. They may be even a comic book fan for life, starting at these formative years.
Yeah, and I noticed also that a new crop of young adult novels and graphic novels taking place especially in the DC universe, where they have a young Oracle who is trying to fight something, and in a young adult kind of way, right? In a young, just frustrated with the world, not Batman level, right? Not Rock'em Sock'em, but sort of desperation because the world doesn't understand me. I can't beat everybody up, but I got to find a way to fight this thing that is greater than myself. And it's really important to me, and no one understands. All of that sort of angsty type, legitimate feelings. I saw one where they had Superboy and young Robin. There's one I saw with, I think they're doing, I know they did the Oracle one, and there's a few others. I think they're doing what is the name of the diamond on the head? A Raven series as well.
All right.
So there's a lot of entry into this world. The world is not going away. You know what I mean? And what just the Marvel Cinematic Universe is making 10 times what they were making in comics in profit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
From the loan. So at the very least, if no one ever, it's sustainable through that medium, right? And they're still getting those stories and things like that. So it's not going to die, but I do feel for people who took a chance to create a comic shop that's helped sell and push things that they love. Like, imagine, like, if I was a manager of a comic shop, that would be an amazing job for me.
Oh yeah.
Right. Me just come and sit and talk to me. I just sit at my desk, right? And people come in and want to talk about comics, anything, right? I would be like the griot of comics. Like, come at me, bro, right? I'm going to be here Tuesday and Thursday nights. Come in and pose your questions and your concerns, and boom, boom, wow, this. But did you see this issue? By the way, we have this issue over here. You need to go talk to them about that, right?
Yeah.
And those kind of things. Like, if I was retired, could you see me working part-time in a comic shop?
Most definitely.
Definitely.
Right? So that may be my retirement life. Work 20 hours a week. And if I ain't got nothing big on the weekends, because it's not open late, right? So I come in on Saturday and Sunday, and I'm like, comic master questions,
These are the mythos of our times.
Yes, right. Come at me, bro. See, it started with Batman. It was the Bat-Man. Let me look that up for you, because I have a nice little screen or whatever. Right? Okay, you got me. All right. Because a lot of people only know from the moment they got into comics. Mm-hmm. They don't know the history and the mythos, or fact that these are reprints or redone of stories that were already told. Right? For some people, the Black Green Lantern is the first Green Lantern.
Yeah.
Right? And so even Hal Jordan is not even the first Green Lantern. There was the one way before him, right? And there's entire stories, things. That's another thing I like about the new, what is the Stargirl? Because Stargirl series is going to pay heavy into the Justice Society. which will all be legacy heroes of all those old heroes that are even older than most of you guys were into, right? Like, who
Yeah.
was the first Doctor Midnight? You don't have a lot of memory of Doctor Midnight. You may know of him, right? So a lot of that stuff will come back and come out. And
Nice.
oh yeah, and Stargirl, the entire series is already in the can. So when it comes out this month on CW and on DC Universe streaming, you'll get the entire season. So it's
Wow.
not going to be affected. I think it's 12 episodes, maybe 13.
Okay.
So it's not going to be affected by but it's still week to week.
Mhm.
If only they just do the Netflix model. Let me binge it.
Well,
All right.
Even Netflix is having some weekly.
I guarantee you have over 100 things in your Netflix queue now you haven't watched.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not gonna watch half that shit probably. All right, gentlemen. That's I think that'll do it for this week, right?
Yes.
Any final thoughts? I did pick up. I've been doing the curbside pickup and delivery on my books, and I've been picking up a bunch of back issues on X-Men. So I'll probably bring some of those to the table. I'm gonna make Emmanuel an X-Men lover.
Yes. I'm waiting for Manuel to bring me an X-Men book you like that's not the Ultimate Universe.
See, why are you putting stipulations on it? I could bring you an X-Men book that I absolutely love, but it'll be the Ultimate Universe.
Okay, so you don't have any of the real X-Men. You only have the
Real
the
X-Men.
stylized X-Men. Real X-Men are OGs, right?
That's the one that I fell in love with.
Okay. So you fell in love after the fact. I see. I understand now. You don't love the real X-Men. You ain't.
Nah.
And on that note,
All right.
gentlemen, we're out.
Plus, the X-Men animated series that was in the X-Men movie was
They did have
I could say I liked those.
Oh.
I did buy them. I did like them, but they were so corny. I remember one panel where Wolverine lost his memory, and he was fighting someone. I think it was Sabretooth, and like it was in a forest, and he cut down some trees, and they landed in an X pattern. And Wolverine that brought his memory back because
is
Wolverine
super
also
corny.
said,